Welcome back and hello if you're new. Known for its bountiful metal acts, Canada has always been one of the adopted homes of technical death metal. Fast becoming one of the premier acts in technical death metal, the Canadian band returned following their Album of the Year contender that was Earthborn Evolution. Having parted ways with longtime bassist Dominique Lapointe, the band have welcomed in Hugo Doyon-Caroux and usher in a brand new era that is the era of Algorythm. Rather than focusing solely on trying to cram as many technicality sections into a riff, the band understand the less is more approach, particularly on Algorythm. The band have really brought their songwriting ideas to the fore here and have created an album that doesn't shy away from taking a step back, which in technical death metal I find is very, very essential. They've created an album that doesn't necessarily shy away from technicality, but doesn't rely too much on technicality as well, falling into that trap. It's the perfect balance of the two. Rather than firing off riffs left, right and centre, which was somewhat their debut, The Aura, instead the band pumped the brakes and it sounds fantastic. Prime example being Entre Suffrage et Mirage, meaning between suffering and the mirage. Not only are the instruments able to speak to each other, but they interact overall with the song beautifully. Another example is the midsection of the title track, Algorythm, where the band completely turn everything on their head and midway through the song totally pull back and have this really large interlude that makes for such a great use of space and really gives you that breather that you kind of really needed. And there are these lovely ethereal cleans that come through with this really nice slow solo. And it just makes sense. It doesn't seem like, Beyond Creation are doing anything for the sake of it. However, no doubt one of the biggest points of difference for Beyond Creation is this idea of the dual register. And what I mean by that is acting similarly to, the way that a piano would work. You'd have one hand which is on the lower register and then one which is on the higher register. So the band will create a bass heavy pathway in terms of, their tapping techniques, but then they'll also have the higher range which enters into the more melodic side, and combining the two creates a really fantastic textured sound. Similar to how you might play a piano, for example. If you listen here, in the introduction, there is a section where it begins with the lower register, then the higher register comes in, and the two coalesce as one. Opening the album with Disenthrall, immediately we're kind of thrown into this epic sound that the band have created. And midway through the album, as a kind of coda, and they've got a fantastic song called À travers le temps et l'oubli. It means through the time and the forgotten. It's a 2-minute type thing, but it creates that well-needed break that the audience has, and they can kind of really reflect on what they've heard so far. But most importantly, it acts as a perfect split for the album before we go into the second part of the record. It's then that we're reminded fiercely that Beyond Creation are first and foremost a death metal band, and In Adversity is uncompromisingly the heaviest track on the album for sure. It's also a fantastic example of just how well frontman Girard's vocals have come along. Potentially the most traditional Beyond Creation track on the album is no doubt The Inversion, full of the classic ideas that we would expect from Beyond Creation. However, it's that sort of midsection where the band pull everything back again, where it totally changes the tone of the track. I feel that Algorythm focuses even more than previously on jazz. For example, the open introduction of Surface's Echoes has a very kind of like fluttery jazz style to it, but it's anchored with those kind of riffs. And Binominal Structures is again another instrumental track which sees the band, favor this idea of melody, and instead of, like I said, instead of putting 1,000 notes in per second, you can really hear each instrument and how they work together, and it has that classic jazz mentality about it. The first solo is a bass solo, then there's a guitar solo, and then there's potentially my favourite section of the song, which is a drum solo. And although they may be playing the same rhythm, the drums are doing some really interesting acrobatics and changing the tempo but keeping it within that pocket. Potentially one of my favourite elements of technical death metal is this sense of epicness. From the opening of Disenthrall right up to the end of the Afterlife, there is this massive sense of epicness, and you can even hear it on the title track as that final riff kind of comes in, and it makes you just want to be like, hey, hey. It'll be a fantastic live one for sure. I also want to highlight the production because, you know, obviously there's so much going on in a technical death metal album, and the fact that there's such clarity with every single element of it really speaks for the production, and Christian Donaldson has done an absolutely fantastic job. Technical death metal can be a difficult tightrope to walk. Too much technicality and it can be overbearing, not enough, and it can be somewhat lackluster and boring. In essence, Beyond Creation have found the perfect compromise in technical death metal, and Algorythm is yet another album of the year contender. And for that reason, I'm going to give the record a 5 out of 5. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like and subscribe button. Make sure to tune in to my Apocalyptic Anniversary series over on Metal Sucks, which is up every week. Please share if you can. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week for another review. Alright, take care.